इंडक्शन प्रोग्राम में आपका फिर से स्वागत है। मे आई टॉक टू मिस्टर द इंस्टीट्यूट BIT मेरठ से कोई है इधर? Somebody from BIT Meerut? Are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir, we are able to hear you.
Okay. Swami Vivekanand College, Indore. Are you able to get us? Indore, Swami Vivekanand College of Engineering. Indore. Somebody there from Indore, Swami Vivekanand Institute, College of Engineering.
Hello.
Yes, you are able to get us?
Yeah, good afternoon, sir. This is Pradeep Lucia from Vivekanand College of Engineering.
Okay. And probably Jaipur Institute of Technology is not able to join us right now.
They will be joining in 5
Maybe
minutes.
they will join us in maybe 5-6 minutes. We are trying to contact them. But
Okay.
let's say announcement in the meantime for Meerut, Indore, and Jaipur, if they are able to get us, that there will be a panel discussion session on Thursday. That is on 12th afternoon from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. There will be a panel discussion session on Thursday, that is on 12th of December. You may invite somebody from local, somebody from industry who is local or maybe around your place, maybe from Meerut or around Meerut or maybe Indore or any industry near Indore. You can invite some person from the industry for the panel discussion, and we can pay an honorarium of 2,000 rupees to that person. Is that clear to everybody?
Okay, sir. Sir, is there any specific topic for panel discussion?
No, topic will be expectations of industry from the diploma holders and degree holders.
Okay, sir.
Sir, honorarium will be paid by the institute or by you?
By us. We will reimburse that money. You will have to pay them the honorarium and take a receipt from them.
Okay, sir.
And you can pay up to 2,000 rupees per person. You may invite one or two persons for that panel discussion.
Okay, sir. Fine.
The timings are 2 to 4 on 12th.
Okay, sir.
All right.
Yeah.
So let me begin my session. We are already being delayed by 15 minutes. My dear friends, in this afternoon session, we are going to cover a very important topic on planning, organizing, and evaluation of practical work. As teachers in the polytechnics and engineering colleges, we are engaged in the business of education and training. When we talk about education, it means we are laying the emphasis on why things happen. When we talk about educational training, and in the educational training, when we talk about education, we try to explain the student on the component of why. And when we talk about the training, we lay the emphasis on the component of how things have to be done. And as teachers, we all understand very well both why and how. Education and training both are very, very important. In my present discussions today in this session on planning, organizing, evaluation of practical work, we will be talking more into details of how. That is a training component. Practical works directly deals with the how things have to be done practically. My other colleagues and the experts might have discussed with you, or they will be discussing with you in the coming sessions on how to develop the cognitive, that is their mind faculties in the students. But in this session we will be talking largely on development of the practical work, that is the practical skills in the students, that is training them on the how to do the things, how component of the educational training. Let me give you an outline of my presentation. We'll be spending some time on the purpose of education, Then I will be talking about an overview of Bloom's taxonomy with emphasis on psychomotor domain. We'll be also talking about problems and essentials of practical work. And my main topic will be, in this session, will be planning, organizing, and evaluation of practical work, vis-a-vis drawing work, lab work, workshop practice, project work, and industrial training. I have deliberately chosen these 4 components because when we talk about the practicals, in most of the engineering colleges and polytechnics, the students, in the name of practical work, are engaged into either they are busy in drawing work, lab work, workshop, project work, and industrial training. I'll be talking about their aims, how to organize them more effectively, and how to evaluate each of the these 4 major components: the drawing work, lab work, workshop, and project work. Now, let us start the discussions by the very purpose of education. The very purpose of education is to bring about desirable change in the behavior of the students. When we say change in the behavior of the learner or the student in terms of his knowledge, skills, and attitudes. The students at any level, maybe even pre-nursery, maybe at nursery, maybe at the middle class, or maybe at a high school, or maybe higher education in the polytechnics and engineering college, students, when they join the institute, they already possess some knowledge, they already have some skills with them, and they have certain attitudes. The purpose of our education is to bring about desirable change in the behavior in terms of their enhanced knowledge, enhanced skills, and modified attitudes. That is basically the purpose of education. There may be many definitions, but then for this session, let us focus on this definition. So in this session, we will focus on desirable change in the behavior of the learner based on their enhanced skills. When they are going to possess the skills in the institute, and eventually when they go to the industry, they are going to display those skills in executing the projects and the assignments given to them on their respective job. Now, a word about the taxonomy. Taxonomy means classification of educational objectives. Whatever are the educational objectives, they can be classified largely into 3 categories. Number 1 is either we are developing the student's mind, what we call as cognitive domain. The word cognitive has origin in cognize, how they recognize the things by their mind, by knowing the things. Either we are dealing with developing the mind, that is developing the cognitive abilities in the students. Number 2, the education objectives can be classified under psychomotor, dealing with the skills of the student. We will go in the details about the psychomotor domain, that is doing the things, and affective domain, which deals with the feelings, attitudes. The whole of the education objectives can be classified either developing the minds, their skills, or their attitudes. Cognitive domain, psychomotor domain, or affective domain. And a well-rounded and fully functional person needs to develop all the 3 domains. If a person has to perform good in the industry or in the society or anywhere, he has to or she has to develop his mind, her mind. They must possess the skills and they must have the right kind of attitudes. The whole of the educational objectives, this is the taxonomy. I will not go in the details of developing the cognitive domain, but let me give you an overview of that. That is, as I said, cognitive domain involves the knowledge and the development of intellectual skills related to the development of the minds of the students. When we talk about the taxonomy of each one of these 3 components, taxonomy of the cognitive domain, psychomotor domain, or affective domain, there are different levels. There are different levels which can be classified. Let us spend maybe next 5 to 6 minutes on taxonomy, means classification of cognitive domain. When we talk about the development of the minds, it starts from knowledge. The very elementary or the lowest level of developing the cognitive domain is that of knowledge. At this level, the students are able to recognize and recall information. You provide certain information to the students, and the students are able to recognize and recall that information. The second higher level under cognitive domain is that of comprehension. At this level, the students have sufficient understanding to organize and arrange material mentally. They are not able to only recall or recognize, but they are developing certain understanding. Let me give you a small example. A very small example, maybe from your elementary level of schooling. When the students come to the pre-nursery classes, the teachers in the class, they sing poems and rhymes. The students are able to recall and recite those poems. Maybe Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water, or any other rhymes or poems, and they learn counting and all that stuff. But at that time, they know, they are able to recall, they are able to recite. It is much later they derive the meaning out of it. They start having understanding what does it mean actually by this rhyme, what the author or the poet is trying to say in that. They are able to understand what 2 multiplied by 2 is actually, or 4 multiplied by 6 is actually. In the primary classes, they only learn the tables, they are able to recall the tables, but then at this comprehension level, they will understand what does it actually mean. And the still higher level is that of application. At this level, the students are able to apply that knowledge. They are not only able to know and comprehend, but they are able to apply. Let me give you a small example again to explain the concept. Let us say the students have learned the tables, and I ask them, okay, this room is maybe 20 feet by 30 feet, and I ask them to calculate the area. Now they know the tables, they understand, and now they are able to apply that knowledge to calculate the area of a room 20 feet by 30 feet, and they will be able to calculate that so much of area is required, area will come. And if I tell them that, okay, we have to now fix up the tiles of a particular size in this room, they will be able to calculate the number of tiles also. So the first level is knowledge, second level is comprehension, the third level is that of application. There are still higher levels under cognitive domain. The fourth level is that of analysis. At this level, the students are able to think critically and in depth. You give them a problem and they are able to analyze. They are able to analyze critically that is there any possibility that we can have different choices are given, what are the merits and demerits, and what is the problem exactly is, and how to approach this problem for its solution. So they are able to analyze the problem at this level. And the still higher level is that of synthesis. At this level, the students are able to give a original means a creative thinking is being developed in the student. They are able to give original solution to the problem. For example, if I say the student to calculate the amount of steel required for a given load conditions in a particular slab in a room, or maybe any structure, building structure, they will be able to analyze the forces and they will be able to give original design. If there are 20 students in the class, there can be 20 different designs available. Somebody may be given different kind of steel. Somebody may be able to calculate different kind of steel, safe structural conditions whereby this requirement of the code and requirement of the structural strength of the building are met with. So the students know the merits, demerits of each one of the approach, and then they give a original or a creative thinking that is called synthesis. There is still higher level that is called evaluation. At this level, the students are able to make a judgment of the information given to them. For example, when you are, let us say, pursuing your MTech or a PhD thesis, you put forth a hypothesis. You know the theory very well, you know the principles very well. At this level, you try to challenge those principles even, or those theories even. You make a judgment. I have a doubt, I have a hunch maybe, that this may or may not work under certain conditions. This holds good under these conditions, this may not hold under these conditions. Or maybe I have a different line of action, we can solve the problem in a very different way also. And then the students evaluate, the students make a judgment, and then either they prove their hypothesis to be right or it may be wrong, whatever the condition may be. But then at this level, the students are evaluating the well established or well accepted theories even. So my dear friends, under cognitive domain, when we talk about the development of the minds, we start with the knowledge, we go to the comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. I would say, at a diploma level, when we talk about the diploma institutions, we lay emphasis up to the level of application. Up to the level of application. When we talk about the theory component, the curriculum, when we design the curriculum or when we are implementing the curriculum, we have to keep in mind that the students must know, they must have comprehension, or they should be able to apply. That is basically largely in most of the topics, in most of the subjects, the level of the students is in the diploma courses. But in the engineering, in the BTech level courses, we take the student to the level of analysis and synthesis also. They should be able to design the thing. They should be able to do the research in a particular area. But when we talk about the postgraduates, maybe MTech or PhD level, we talk about evaluation. So this is basically development of the cognitive domain of the students is. That is the first education objective is developing the minds, and these are the basically 6 further classifications of developing the minds is. Now, a word about the psychomotor domain. We'll go in the details. As I said, we'll be talking about the practical skills, how to do the things. We are going to emphasize more on the psychomotor domain. Psychomotor, these are 2 words combined together, we call it psychomotor domain. Psycho means mind again. Motor means your motorized skills using your various limbs of the body. Your body works as a motor, but to run this motor, you require psyche, you require mind. So that is why we call the skill development domain as psychomotor domain. Psychomotor domain, it includes the physical movements, coordination, and motorized area of skills. We'll go further for the classification. Bloom gave the classification, the taxonomy for the cognitive domain, and Simpson, Grunwald, and Dave, they classified psychomotor domain of educational objectives in this way. At the very first level, the students just imitate. The teacher does anything. Teacher can be, you can be a teacher, or even the parents, or anybody in the environment can be teacher. The students learn the skills by just imitation. The students repeat the act that has been demonstrated, but they are learning it through trial and error. They are not very sure actually whether they are doing it in the correct way or the wrong. After a few minutes, maybe you will be having more clarity. But the first level is that of imitation. Whatever skills you are learning by mock exercises or by actually performing the things, the students are imitating and they learn by imitation. The second level is that of manipulation. The learner continues to practice. The learner continues to practice a skill or a sequence of skills, and then he is or she is able to perform that skill with certain level of confidence. That is the stage of manipulation. He is reasonably sure how to do the things independently also. So that is the level of manipulation. The third level is that of precision. He is not only able to imitate, manipulate, but is able to perform that skill with certain level of precision. My dear friends, when we talk about the diploma programs or degree programs, we raise the level to the students. When we talk about the training, the skill development in the students, we raise them to the level of imitation, manipulation, and in many cases, the level of precision also. For example, measurements, taking the test reports in the laboratories, or any kind of functional areas which we are, let us say, drawings, for example, reading and interpretation of drawing. We have to be precisely giving the dimensions and everything. We will talk about that a little later about it. But I try to understand, when we talk about the psychomotor domain, in degree and diploma programs, we raise the levels to the level of precision. But there are two further higher level. One is next higher level on the psychomotor domain, again, is articulation. The learner continue to modify the pattern or movement of the skills to meet a specific requirement. He is able to articulate. He is able to, let us say, you have taught him how to do the things, and at this level, articulation level, he transcends those things, and whatever actually action is required at that particular moment, he is able to do. Let me give you a small example here to explain this phenomenon. At the level of imitation, he is not very sure, he is just learning. At the level of manipulation, he is quite sure. At the precision, he is precisely able to do that. And at the level of articulation, he is able to fit the things as per the requirements. For example, let us take a common example of, let us say, that of driving. Most of us now drive cars or scooters. At one time, we were at the stage of imitation. Slowly and slowly, we learned how to manipulate it ourselves. We were able to independently do it. And slowly and slowly, we were able to drive the car precisely, how much clutch has to be pressed, how much race has to be given, how much brakes have to be done, how much steering has to be done. At the level of articulation, his focus is not on, brakes, his race, or maybe clutch or anything. His focus is to, let us say, if he has to negotiate a turn or a traffic conditions which are heavy traffic, he is able to, fit in all those skills precisely and able to maneuver his car or a scooter or whatever vehicle he is driving. That is the level of articulation. And then still higher level is that of naturalization. The learner's response is automatic without thinking. That is reflex action. At this level, we perform so many things in our day in and day out activities naturally. That is basically aim of naturalization. Again, at diploma and degree levels, we go to the level of precision, but in certain cases, we go to the level of articulation and naturalization. It will depend on the context. It will depend on the contents of the curriculum, up to what level you want to raise the students. But you must, as a teacher, must understand these levels so that when you come to the class, you are sure that my students are able to go to the level of manipulation, precision, articulation, or naturalization. It will depend on the contents, of course, and the time available. Let me give you here the golden rule for developing the psychomotor abilities in the students. Psychomotor abilities means developing the skills. The golden rule is practice. Practice, practice, and practice. साइकोमोटर डोमेन डेवलपमेंट करने के लिए बच्चों को काफी ज्यादा प्रैक्टिस की आवश्यकता होती है. You have to do a lot of practice, and the second golden rule attached with this the practice rule is feedback. As teachers, you must be able to give the feedback to the students on each and every step when they are performing certain skills. So practice coupled with feedback makes the student develop their psychomotor domain at different levels. I will like to go a little further details about the psychomotor domain because that's our topic, developing the skills, the practical skills in the students. The very first level, as I told you, is that of imitation. Now, when you are teaching in the classroom, developing the skills in the student, as teachers and as a students, when the students are learning how to develop the skills, or as an examiner, these action verbs are very, very helpful for the teachers, for the students, for the examiners. At different levels they define. You will find certain action verbs are repeated under different categories, under different classification. For example, certain action verbs which are appearing at the imitation, you may find them in the manipulation or in the level of precision also. But it will depend on the context. It will depend on the context where you are using a particular action verb. That will define the its student's ability at that level. So the context is very, very important. So at imitation, the students are able to copy, they begin, they assemble, they attempt, carry out, calibrate, things like that. And depending on the class, maybe in the drawing, maybe in the lab, maybe in the workshop, or maybe in the project, the students do all this activity when you are talking about the imitation level. At the manipulation level, the action verbs can be the students acquire, they assemble, they complete, they conduct, they do, they execute, improves, they maintains, makes, manipulates, operate, faces, performs, produces progress. At the level of precision, there can be action verbs like he is able to achieve, he is able to accomplish, he advances, he or she automates, exceeds, excels, masters, reaches, refines, succeeds, surpasses, transcends. Transcend is a very beautiful action verb, which means going a level beyond what is being taught or what is being given to the students. That is basic transcend. You will find transcend at the higher levels of psychomotor domain also. So these action verbs define at what level the students are performing, but the context is very, very important, as I told you. At the level of articulation, the students is able to adapt, alter, changes, excels, rearranges, reorganizes, revises, surpasses, and transcend. At the level of naturalization, he is able to arrange, combine, create, design, refine, originates, and again transcend. So this is a word about the psychomotor domain. I will very quickly cover the affective domain also, the third level of educational objectives, that is affective domain. It deals with the interests, attitudes, opinions, appreciation, values, emotionals, all these things, the feelings. They are very, very important also. Along with the development of the mind and the body, their attitudes, their interests, their opinions, their values are very, very important. Nowadays in the industries, there is a lot of emphasis on ethical values. They try to see your ethical value when they are taking the students for the placements. So developing affective domain. The golden rule in affective domain is role model. As I said, in the psychomotor domain, the golden rule is practice coupled with the feedback. In the affective domain, the golden rule is role model. Whatever lecture we may give in the classroom on any of the attitudes, if we are not playing as a role model as teachers in the classroom, they will never be able to get those attitudes. So the teachers have to be a role model for the student to develop the right kind of attitudes or to develop the affective domain in the students. Again, the taxonomy, the classification of affective domain, at the very beginning, it starts from the receiving. Whatever things you are trying to tell the students passively receive them. Okay? And then the second one is responding. Then the students are not only able to receive, but they start responding. For example, you say in the class that punctuality, they are receiving. They are just listening to you. That teacher is telling us to be punctual and all, or maybe honesty, or maybe loyalty, or whatever. then at the level of responding, you will find them, they are responding to it also. They are coming in time and all. At the level of valuing, the third level is that of value. At this level, the students are not only able to receive and respond, but they start valuing those things also. That really is the punctuality really very good virtue which we should inculcate in our personalities, or is honesty, or for that matter, any of the things which you are talking about in the affective domain, they start valuing those things, that those things are there or no. And then the next higher level is that of organization. It means they try to bring about different values, and if there are any conflicts in those values, they learn how to resolve those conflicts, and they build up their own value system, what we call as this person is having this kind of value, this person is having this kind of value, or this person is internally consistent. Every time he values and he takes the right decisions. And there can be certain conflicts in the different values also. Let me give you one example what kind of conflicts the students face, or any one of us also face in the real life when we talk about the different values. For example, we say punctuality. My office starts at 9 o'clock, and keeping the traffic conditions and the distance into mind, I start from my home, let us say, at 8:40, keeping 20 minutes margin so that by 9 o'clock I'm in my office. I, for example, say that I am very punctual. I value the time. That's one of the important aspect of the personality, or the factor in the affective domain. But then one day I'm driving on the road and I find an accident. And there is one person who is bleeding very profusely there. And if nobody is attending him or her, the life of the person can be in danger, or he may have to undergo many major complications later on. Now, you are having a value that you have to reach the office in time, in 20 minutes. And there is another value which says that if a person is under distress, under this kind of conditions, where he needs some kind of help, another value says that you must help your fellow citizens. And now there can be a conflict going on in your mind, whether I should stop my car, help this person, or I should report the office in that time at 9 o'clock sharp. So there can be conflict. So sometimes there can be conflict in the values, and at that particular moment, if you are able to consistently resolve those conflicts and able to take a right action at that time, that is basically the level of organization. For example, in that situation which I gave you just now, there can be possibility that there may be other people around there, but nobody is coming up to help really help that guy. Maybe at that time I would like to call my boss or maybe some other colleague in the office, tell him that I may be getting late by maybe another half an hour or so. I can explain him in 1 minute or 2 minutes that this is a situation. I must take the person to the hospital, or must give him some kind of first aid if first aid is available in my car, and then report the office. That's done. So you are able to take a decision in every situation after removing the conflicts, if there are any conflicts in the different value system. That is the level of organization. And then there can be the highest level under affective domain is that of characterization. At this level, the learner, the student, has held a value system that has controlled his behavior for a sufficiently long time. That becomes his signature. I call it a signature. That becomes his signature. That becomes his lifestyle. We say so and so person का characteristic ऐसा है, he will never be late, or so and so person is dead honest. When we say dead honest means we can trust that person, or so and so person is very loyal, or so and so person is very compassionate. You know, in an organization, you will find people having different kind of characters, and those characters are we attach those characteristics to a person because they have displayed those values sufficiently long time, and that has become their lifestyle. So, we have restricted when we talk about the curriculum implementation, or maybe when you are talking about education and training in your institutions, we have said that under cognitive domain, we raise the student to the level of analysis or synthesis. And under psychomotor domain, I said we raise the student to the level of precision. But under affective domain, we raise the student to the level of characterization. Let the characters come, the right kind of characters come from your institute at Meerut and Indore and Jaipur. So that is basically, we say, if a person is behaving like this, we say he is, we feel pride in saying that we have produced such kind of characteristics from our institute. That's our lifestyle of our students is like that. They will be always disciplined. They will be always, we can vouch upon the characteristics of the students. The types of the skills can be intellectual, cognitive, and motor. We will talk about that a little later. But let me now focus on more on the now subject, that is practical skills, that is the practical skills in the students. Let us talk about the problems in skill development. We have got feedback from the industry. When we talk to the industry in general, we say we often hear from them that your students are good theoretically, but when they come to the practical, how to do the things, they are not able to perform to that level. So there can be certain genuine problems. The skill development is not easy as development of the cognitive abilities are. And when we try to analyze, ask the students and the teachers and the examiners, what are the problems? I am going to focus some of the problems for your consideration here, that these are the problems in the skill development. Number one problem is lack of appropriate resources. The resources can be physical resources, they can be human resources, they can be financial, they can be informational resources. But if the right kind of resources are not available in the institutions, that can be a problem area for skill development. Then time available for skill development. I told you the golden rule in skill development is practice, practice, and practice. And if we do not have sufficient time available for developing right kind of skills to raise the level of student to the level of precision or higher levels, time can be a very big constraint. It can be a problem area. Then more emphasis on theory, memorization, and rote learning. It has been seen that mostly in the engineering colleges and the polytechnics, the students are more busy into the theory learning and memorizing the formulas, principles, rote learning. There is less emphasis on the development of the skills. In general, I'm talking about, not in a particular subject area. They consider that passing a theory exam is very, very tough and important and very challenging. They spend more time on that. For practicals, they normally take it granted that we will somehow pass. The teacher will somehow pass. Hona to aasan hi hai iske andar. So they give less emphasis on the skill development, because passing, failing, or scoring is the main criteria which governs the students' learning capabilities, the time the students spend in the that kind of activities in the learning. So they spend more time on the theory, memorization, and rote learning, and less time on the practicals. Then there can be lack of preparedness by the teachers. Sometimes it may happen that as teachers, we may not be ourselves very sure about certain skills when it comes to drawing or maybe lab or workshop or any other things. So they are not very, very prepared. It's important. Teacher must be prepared for developing the right kind of skills in the students. The another problem area can be absence of feedback and follow-up. It happens especially in the areas in the classrooms where the size of the class is very big, or it is done in such a way that you are not able to give individually the feedback to the student how he is performing in a skill. I told you practice coupled with the feedback is the golden rule for the developing the skills. And in the absence of the right kind of feedback, when you have large classroom sizes, and you don't have a proper system of providing feedback, the students may learn the wrong skills. And my dear friends, let me say here that to learn is easy in skills comparatively, but to unlearn a skill, if you have developed a wrong habit of performing an act by a wrong skill, by a wrong action, to unlearn that is much more tougher, because you become very quickly the habit of doing a thing in a particular way. I like to skip maybe this slide for lack of time, but I like to focus more on some other important things. I think some of the presentations are going below. We have to raise the level of camera maybe here. Okay. Now I am going to present before you the essential skills for a technical student. You know, again, when we interacted with the industry, and we keep interacting with the industry often, we find out that what are the skills which you are looking for in a diploma holder or in a degree holder. And they have industries, you know, depending on the industries, they have given us the feedback that we require about 7 to 8 types of skills. And if you are able to develop these skills, any one of them or some of them, maybe combination of skills in the students, we will like to employ that student. And I'm going to share with you those skills, essential skills for the technical students, which is given by the industries. Number one is, they say that if your students are able to handle the materials, they should be able to handle the materials well. There is jobs for them. Handling means procurement and also testing. Also the inventory control and other things related to the material management. If they are able to handle tools, equipment and machines, the industry is looking for those boys and girls. If they know how to read and interpret drawings, the industry is looking for those kind of boys and girls. If they have the testing and diagnostic skills with them, the industry is looking for these kind of skills in the student. They should be able to test, they should be able to diagnose where the problem is, analytical abilities related to the skills. Then measurement skills. The student should be able to measure accurately, precisely. That is the skill the industry is looking for in the students. Then designing and problem solving. They should be able to design, make a right kind of sketch or maybe drawing, and problem solving skills. Then they also look for, nowadays most of the things have gone on the computers. They want the student must have computer operating skills also, relevant to that area, wherever he is working. Maybe mechanical के लिए different है, civil engineering के लिए different है, or electrical, electronics or textile के लिए different है. So the computer operating skills relevant to that discipline is very important. And they are also interested to have the students to possess the skills related to estimating and costing. Given a job, they should be able to make an estimate. They should be able to make a rough, at least, budgeting or costing, that this will cost so much. Then, besides the technical skills, the industry is also looking for the skills related to the management. That is, group dynamics, how the students can work in a team. The managerial skills, there can be many managerial skills. We call them soft skills or generic skills also. Then communication and interpersonal skills. The industry is also looking for the students in the communication, means their verbal and non-verbal communication, and their interpersonal skills in the student. So if we, through whatever subjects, through whatever experiences we are giving the students in different subject areas, from let us say 9 to 5 in the college, if we focus our attention to this about 8 or 9 skills, this is what the industry requires from the student. Maybe some of them can be liked by certain students. Maybe one student is very good in estimating and costing. maybe one student is very good in interpreting, reading and interpreting a drawing, maybe, for example. So if you are able to focus on some of these these skills, the industry is looking for these kind of things. And if your student is very good in the team working, for example, or communication, or interpersonal relations, again working in a team, these are the skills the industry is looking for. Now, let me give you an in-depth information or share the information about how to improve the practical skills. You know, we have talked about the 4 skills: the students' drawing, lab work, project, and workshop. So we will talk each one of them now here. Coming first of all to the drawing work. These are the specific skills or opportunities where the students' psychomotor abilities or their training or their specific skills can be developed. Number 1 is that of drawing work. We are engaging them in the drawing work in the classrooms. In the curriculum, there is a component of drawing work. The aim of the drawing work is the student should be able to read and interpret the drawings. Let us remember the aim very well. When the students are coming to the drawing classes, or in whatever class the drawing work is being done by the students, the aim should be in your mind. They should be able to read and interpret the drawings. Then another aim, very important aim, is that of the student develop the skills to measure, draw different views of the geometrical objects. So these are the basically 2 major aims of the drawing work, and there is another aim which is called problem solving skills, to recreate a view of a geometrical object into different views. So whatever drawing classes we are having, whatever drawing sheets the students are going to make, if we are able to inculcate these 3 skills in the student, our objectives are met with. Now, a word about the planning, how to plan a drawing work. Number 1 is teachers should prepare the detailed exercise. जो भी बच्चों को exercise देनी है for the semester, the teacher should be able to prepare a detailed exercises according to curriculum. This activity should be started a semester or a term before. It is semester pattern in your college. Most of the colleges are now having semester pattern, but in certain universities and certain states, they are following still the yearly pattern. Whatever drawings and whatever exercises, drawing exercises has to be done by the student, the teacher should be able to plan. This is a very important component. You know, planning means a semester before or a term before, the teacher start planning for that activity, that I have to give this kind of exercise to the student in a drawing class, keeping in mind the objectives which we just now stated above. Then the teacher should be able to decide the number of drawings to be completed by the students in a particular semester or term, and also the schedule of each drawing. A particular drawing may take two terms, a particular drawing may take 3 terms, a particular drawing can be finished in 1 term even. Let me give you here one small tip here. Maybe later on we will repeat that again. Try to, when you're trying to make a timetable in the college, time is a big constraint, and as I said again and again, practice is very important, and certain activities in the practical classes may take longer time. Try to schedule the timetabling in such a way that the practical classes, drawing work, lab work, the workshop, the project work may be done in the afternoon session, towards the last, so that even if you have students are not able to complete the drawing in the particular term, they can extend, they can use the time after the college is over, maybe after 4 o'clock, maybe after 5 o'clock, depending on the time of your college. Now here are the tips for the drawing class, how to improve a drawing work in the college. That is, teacher should not give finished drawing to the students. Many of the times we find that the teachers give the finished drawings and students just copy. They are not developing the right kind of reading and interpretation skills or making the drawings, but they are just copying if you give the finished drawings. Then the student should make a few drawings in each semester by use of AutoCAD or any other graphical software. If the curriculum is asking for all the drawings to be made by using the drawing instruments like mini drafter, set squares, and other things, even if it's not mentioned in your curriculum, try to give one exercise at least in a particular term, semester, or a year. They should be able to make the drawing using a AutoCAD or any other graphical software. Both manual drawing and drawings made by using a graphical software are very important. So if all the drawings are to be done by AutoCAD, if the curriculum says that all the drawings has to be made by using AutoCAD and graphical software, try to get at least a few drawings made by use of some kind of drawing instruments. So both are very important. Then the teacher should give drawings with missing items or views and inaccurate drawings, and the student should be able to ask to identify the gaps in the drawing. For example, if let us say I ask the student to make a drawing of this table, for example, or maybe this dais, and I do not give dimensions of a particular, let us say, element in that piece of work, maybe table or a dais or any other drawing, any machine drawing maybe. The student should be able to pinpoint that, sir, I cannot make this drawing because this item is missing here, this view is missing. Then exercises should be given on reading and interpretation of drawing. Besides the exercises of the actual drawing the student is going to draw, number of drawing sheets, teacher should make some effort to bring some actual drawings relevant to that area from the industry and ask the student whether they can read those drawings or no, what kind of interpretation they can make from those drawings. Then the student should be made aware of the national and international drawing standards. This is very, very important. Nowadays, it's more important because in the industry, with each of the machinery which you're going to buy, there comes a manual, and in the manual there are different kind of drawings, and in those drawings they use international drawing standards. If the students are not familiar with those international drawing standards, they will not be able to interpret, they will not be able to read those drawings, they will not be able to many times operate that machinery even. So there should be some specific classes may be held during the drawing classes where you make the student familiar with the national standards as well as the international drawing standards also. Then, as I said, feedback is very important. I have listed here 5 points in the drawing class you must give the student feedback about. Maybe you can give the feedback about the missing dimensions, inappropriate line work, missing specifications, proper proportioning, neatness in drawing work, etc. So the teacher should give the feedback, your dimensions are not properly done, your specifications are not properly written in the drawing sheet you have made, or maybe your proportioning is very bad in the drawing which you have made. The feedback, following these 5, or maybe you can identify some more aspects, but these 5 are very, very important. The outstanding requirement by the industries about the drawing work. They must be able to give feedback. Now, about the evaluation of the drawing work, I am going to suggest you here a table which defines the weightages to be assigned to various components while evaluation of the drawing work. Normally, we see that in most of the universities and boards, in the engineering college and diploma colleges, there is a drawing paper like any other theory paper, and the students make the drawing, and then they go to an evaluator. He marks the paper or she marks the paper like any other theory paper, and based on that end product, he gets the marks. But my dear friends, none of the practical works can be assigned or should be assigned like this. There is a process by which we can make the evaluation of the practical work more objective in nature. Otherwise, it will all subject to the teacher who's going to evaluate the sheets sitting at his place, or maybe sitting at the desk in the college or in the university. Every practical exercise can be evaluated more and more objectively. And I am suggesting you here the weightages to be assigned to various components for the drawing work. If we are able to divide the marks into different components, more and more objectivity will come in the evaluation. So for the drawing work, we divide the whole of the 100 marks into 4 components. We say 20% marks may be assigned to process evaluation. That is, when the student is actually making the drawing, the evaluator will be there and he or she will watch how the student is making the drawing. And then 20% marks will be assigned there and then. There he will say the student's ability to follow correct procedures, conventions, proper use of instruments and materials, timely completion of drawings. There can be more dimensions added to the process evaluation, 20%. And then 30% marks can be on the product evaluation, where you are now presently giving almost 100% marks here. We say the final drawing may carry 30% marks, where you see the choice of the scale, dimensioning, labeling, size and proportioning, inclusion of stated number of components and correct relationship between the components, then line work, accuracy, printing, meeting BIS standards and all that stuff. All these things can be seen by 30% marks, and then 30% marks can be divided into these subcomponents. Then 20% marks should be always given to the general behavior, which talks about the interest, independent, how independently he has made a drawing, neatness, and creativity. But what new things he has created in the drawing. Drawing activity is basically creative activity. It should not be same for all the class. You give a problem and he's making a drawing, maybe there can be 20 different drawings in the classroom. So what kind of creativity he has done? So that is a 20% marks for that. And then 30% marks should be for the viva voce. And our objective of the drawing work, as I said in the beginning, is read and interpret. So you are carrying certain blueprints, maybe the drawing which he has already made, or certain blueprints from the industry, and ask the students questions on that. And if they're able to reply those questions, you can award them 30% marks, or depending on the ability. So your evaluation of any of the practical should correspond with the objectives for which they have been included in the curriculum and for which they have been taught in the classroom. So 20% marks, 30% marks, 20% marks, and 30% marks goes to process evaluation, that is how they are making the drawing, product evaluation, finding drawing sheet, general behavior, and viva voce. And in each of the 4 components, there are certain sub-components. You may add and delete some component depending on your situations. Now, about the laboratory work, the aims. What is the aim of the laboratory work? The aim of the laboratory work is to integrate the theory knowledge with that of practice, so that the students are able to, the purpose why we have the laboratory classes in the colleges, in the engineering college and polytechnic, because we are teaching them certain principles, certain theories. The students are not able to appreciate those principles and theories unless and until they prove by certain practicals, yes, this theory is okay, this principle works actually. So one of the aim is to integrate theoretical knowledge with that of practice, so that students are able to appreciate the theory, that the students are able to appreciate the principles. Then also the laboratory work also teaches students how to do the experiments, experimental method, how to do the experiments. In their life, when they go to the industry, they have to experiment with so many things. So the laboratory work equips the student to have an ability to do the experiment with the things. Then selection, use, and operation of various instruments and accessories. One of the aim is to find alternatives, selection of appropriate materials, and procedure for testing and other study. I mean, if there are different kind of alternatives available, the student should be able to experiment with the things, and they should be able to come out with the right kind of things to be applied in a particular situation. Then interpretation of results from a given experiment. And the last but not the least is that of writing of a technical reports. Nowadays in the industries, depending on the work conditions, the industry expect the student to write certain reports, maybe hourly or maybe daily report, maybe weekly or fortnightly or monthly reports. The laboratory exercises in the classrooms give the student ability how to write reports, which is handy to them when they go to the industry for the working. And here are some suggestions of the teachers to improve the laboratory classes. Number one is that objectives of each experiment should be very well defined, and if there is any need to refine, we need to refine those objectives very well, and students must understand why I am performing this experiment. Then development and use of laboratory manuals. When the student come to the classroom to perform certain experiment, they should not be asked to write the theory. They shouldn't be asked to write the make a sketch of the equipment they're going to use or detail of the material and all that. They should be busy in doing the experiment. All those things should be given in the laboratory manuals, where you have the tables where they will actually put in the readings which they are going to get from the performance of the experiment. So even if the laboratory manuals are not available, it is the responsibility of the teachers to develop those manuals and should be able to give the instructions to the student how to go about for the experiments, what are the precautions like, what is the underlying theory behind it, what are the potential questions and all that. Then they must be able to identify the gaps in terms of the resources and experiment. For example, if you are having a semester, in that semester in a particular subject, you are having 10 experiments, the teacher should be able to identify, okay, I have the equipment or maybe material only for the 3 or maybe 4, maybe 7, depending on the situation. You should be able to identify the gap a semester before, so that you have 6 months time or 1 year time, if it is a yearly pattern which followed by your university or board. They should be able to identify that a semester before, and they should strive to get those resources in time. And even if they are not able to get those resources in time there, they should be able to identify the places where those experiments can be performed by the students. Maybe some neighboring institute, maybe in the industry itself. Many times in our institute, people come with the students and we allow them to use our laboratories to perform certain experiments wherever we have the facilities. So this is very important. I have already covered this point. Identify the places where the students can be doing will be doing the experiments if the facilities are not available. Then the teachers must first demonstrate all the experiments. Now, this is a big onus lying on the teachers that they must be able to demonstrate all the experiments, and then students should be able to ask to perform the experiment. So it becomes paramount and essential for the teachers to be able to do the experiment themselves first. And if there is any need for the training, they should go for the training and learn how to perform those experiments. Okay, we have covered this. And readiness of equipment beforehand. When the student comes to a class of, let us say, 2 hours or 3 hours, all the equipment material should be in order, so that the students, as soon as the experiment class has to come, laboratory class has to come, they get busy in doing the experiment. Sometimes you may require 1 week time to hold a lab work of 3 hours even. Maybe 1 week is required for that preparation. But then the lab should be ready beforehand. It should not happen that the student come and now you are looking for the equipment, and now you are looking for the material, now you are looking for the manual, now you are looking for this and that. No, it should be done all very well in advance, and the time should be spent on doing the experiment. And as far as possible, individually the student should be able to perform the experiments, but then if it's not possible, then at the most 2 or 3 students should be able to group together to do the experiments. Group size should not be more than 2 or 3 students in any case. I told you about this point. The manual is very important and the student should be busy in doing the experiments. The teacher should be able to give the feedback to the students immediately during and after that lab is over. Immediately, as soon as the students are performing on that process itself, the student should be able to, the teacher should be able to give the feedback to the student कि आप कल का procedure कल चल रहा है, आपका यहाँ पे कल चल रहा है, यहाँ पे कल चल रहा है. This will happen only when the class size is small. So that's why I said feedback is very important. Then use performance for assessment of student performance. I will give those performance. Then on the spot viva voce. As soon as the experiment is done, on the spot viva voce should be done in that experiment. I will be skipping these slides for the students maybe some other time. But then let me give you here certain performance which will help you in improving your lab work. This is a performer which is dealing with the identification of a resource gap for effective conduct of practical work. You can develop the performer like this, where you have the name of the institute, department name, name of the laboratory. Simple performer of 1 page, or let us say half the page. Name of the institute, name of the department, name of the laboratory, and then you say, okay, list of the gaps. For example, space, you say space is adequate or not, or additional space is required, how much. Then the raw material and equipment not available, not in working order if it is available, whether it's working order or no, just mention here. Then the gaps in terms of the human resources, maybe faculty, maybe the supporting staff. You do not have the supporting staff, laboratory attendant or laboratory technician. Then comments on availability of the laboratory manual, whether manual is available or no, or if it is available, is it up to date or no, just a line about that. Then list of the experiment which the teacher is unable to get conducted in the college and he has to find the alternative place. So simple performer of 5 points here can give the students and the teachers sufficient insight about the resource gap. Then again, about the evaluation of the laboratory work, the whole lab work can be evaluated under 4 components. This is a table of the weightages to be assigned for each of the component. Number 1 is process evaluation. As the student are performing the experiment, 40% marks should go there and then. Then 20% marks should be given to the actual quality of the product. Means the report, the results, how good and bad results are, may carry 20% marks only. Then the general behavior may carry 10% marks, in which you try to see the care for the material and equipment, independent and working time and space. Then 30% marks may be assigned to the viva voce. Because in the laboratory work, our aim was to develop the underlying concepts, the students' understanding of the underlying concepts in a theory. So 30% marks can be assigned by asking the questions on those concepts based on the experiment which they have performed. So in the laboratory work, out of 100 marks, we can divide, like this: 40 marks for the process evaluation as they are doing the experiment, 20% marks for the product, the results which they have got, and 10% for the general behavior, and 30% for the report. You may add some more components or subcomponents depending on your laboratory class. Now this is the performer which talks about the assessment performance of the students in the different laboratory classes. So you can use this performance assessment performer for each student for each of the class, so that by the end of, let us say, 8th semester or 6th semester in degree or diploma program, the students know how much he has performed on the scale of 5-point scale. Now, coming to the third very important component of workshop practice. We have already covered the drawing work, its aim, its organization, tips for improvement and evaluation. We have also covered about the laboratory. Now, a very important component is that of workshop practice. The aim of the workshop practice is, the main aim is developing manual skills in the students. Here the aim is how to develop the manual skills in the students. Again, also the aim is learning fabrication, manufacturing, process skills. Another very important aim is understanding and skills in measurement, accuracy, fits and tolerances vis-a-vis quality. So through the workshop practice, we try to develop these skills in the students. Then the students also develop the diagnostic skills, where the fault lies, repair and maintenance skills also. Attitude towards safety and environment. Selection of appropriate alternate materials, tools and equipment. My dear friends, when we talk about the workshop practice, when the student goes to the workshop, try to keep these 6 aims into mind, whatever jobs the students are performing in the workshop. Manual skills, quality, and alternatives available. They should be able to diagnose. They should be able to make decisions. And I'm going to use this material, this tool, this machinery to make a particular job. Now, certain suggestions for the teachers how to improve the workshop practice. Number 1 is the layout of the workshop should be comfortable, keeping in mind the ergonomics. Your working platform at the level where the maximum output can be obtained. The ergonomics is very important in workshop layout. Should be done like that. Then the group size should be limited only 1 student per job. The aim of the workshop practice is that of developing the manual skills. And manual skills can be developed only when the students are doing manual work individually by himself or herself. It cannot be developed by group exercise, by just watching and learning. So the group size has to be 1 student per job. Then the advanced planning, again, about the tools, about the materials, about the machine, a semester before. Then again, as in case of laboratory manuals, in this case, the instruction sheet should be given to the student for about each job which they are going to perform. The student should not be coming to the workshop and then making a drawing, making a list of the material, list of the equipment, list of the tools and all that. No. When they come to the workshop, they should be able to just go on the bench and start working on that bench to prepare the job. All those things can come in the instructional sheet, should be given to the students and prepared by the teacher himself or herself. And then wearing of uniform is very important in the workshop. It adds to the dignity of the labor, and also keeping in mind the safety. Certain workshop uniform should be designed in such a way that there's no hassles because of the loose dresses or the bare feet, and students should not come in chappals in the workshop. They may hurt themselves. So dignity of labor and also keeping in mind the safety. Wearing of uniform is very important. Then emphasis not on writing the procedures but on performance. I told you. Continuous feedback to the students. Again, in this case also continuous feedback. As far as possible, latest tools and machines should be used for making a job. For example, CNC machine. If it is not available in the college, which may happen, then the student may be taken at least to the industry where these things are being used, or maybe in the nearby institution organizations where these things are available. The student must be given some exercises there, some permission may be sought, and the student may be given some kind of exercise, with some kind of jobs where they can perform the experiment, those jobs using the latest tools and machines. Then frequent visit to nearby industry for exposing students to various materials, tools, equipment is very important. Whatever jobs they are making in the classroom, relating them to the industrial practices is very important, and that will happen only when you are taking the students to nearby industries and showing them the actual scale of operations, actual working conditions in the industry where those jobs are being made, so that the students are able to correlate what they are learning in the college with the practices which are happening in the industry. And after talking about the tips, now let me come to the again evaluation part. In order to have the objectivity in the evaluation of the project in the workshop practice, out of 100 marks, again 20% marks can go to the process evaluation, where you try to see the students' ability to read and interpret the drawing, follow up of the correct procedure and process, the students' ability to handle the materials, machines, tools, equipment, their skills in observation of safety rules and norms, their ingenuity in use of materials, timely completion of job, ability to follow the BIS standards. All these things, and you may add some more sub-component under process evaluation, may carry 20% marks. In the workshop, we say that 50 marks may be assigned for the final job which the student have actually made, in which you try to see the dimensioning, shape, finish or workmanship, and tolerance limit or the quality. And 10% marks can be given to the general behavior, in which you try to see the care of the equipment, working space, optimal use of time, and sense of independence. And then again, 20% marks are reserved for the viva voce. After each of the job performance, each of the class, there should be some viva voce, and the relevant theory or underlying principles should be asked the student whether they have understood them or they know very well or not. So these 4 components of process evaluation, product evaluation, general behavior, will ensure to large extent the objectivity in evaluation of the workshop. Now, the 4th component of practical work is that of organization of minor and major projects. We have minor projects, we also have the major projects. Now, what is the question of what is the difference between the minor and major project? There can be different kinds of projects, my dear friends. One type of projects can be just expository, where the students are taken to the industry and you are exposing the student to make a study and write a report to know what is going on in the industry. The other kind of projects can be the students have been given certain knowledge and skills through different subjects. Now they are able to apply that knowledge and those skills in performing certain tasks. You give them certain tasks and they are performing using the knowledge and skills which has been imparted to them through different subjects. They comprise of minor projects. And the major projects are one in which the students are trying to attempt a problem which is live problem in the industry. That is your major projects. So there can be minor projects, there can be major projects, there can also be expository type of projects where the student make a study only. The aims of the project work, the very important first aim is to develop transfer skills, transfer of whatever knowledge, skills and attitude you have given to the student. They should be able to transfer those knowledge, skills and attitude to real life situations. Number 2, very important component of objective of project work is developing learning to learn skills in the student, or what we call as problem solving or higher level cognitive skills in the student. Thereby, it's very important that the student must be able to develop a skill how to learn by themselves. We are not going to stay with the student all life. They must learn in life how to learn by themselves. The project activity is one activity during the 4 years program or 3-year program in the diploma programs, where the students learn how to learn by themselves. Then developing creativity and report writing skills is one of the aims. Then some of the students develop the entrepreneurial skills. Once they do a project, they develop a confidence, and then some of the students I have seen that those who take a lot of interest in the project activities, they develop certain entrepreneurial skills, and later on they do not seek the job. They say that we will set up our own industry, we will set up our own unit, and we will be an entrepreneur ourselves. Now, certain tips for the effectiveness of how to organize the project work. The very important thing is in every practical work is the planning part. In the planning of the project work, the HOD, head of department, and the departmental faculty should start planning for minor or major project work right in the beginning of the term, or preferably a term before it occurs. Even if it is a case of let us say a drawing work or a lab work or a workshop, the planning has to start always a semester before, a term before. They should start planning. Then there should be a series of brainstorming sessions with the faculty and the students to identify the projects. I normally suggest that there should be fortnightly or monthly meetings a semester before, where all the faculty members, including the HOD, the concerned department, and all the students, they start exploring that what kind of projects can be given to them, what kind of projects can be undertaken by the students. There will be a series of brainstorming sessions. Maybe you can invite the people from the industry also in those sessions. Some of the industry people may be coming. They may be sharing the problems they are facing in the industry, which can give the cue to the students that they can take up those kind of projects. Then each teacher should be able to guide and supervise a group of 3 to 5 students. It is not the responsibility of the training and placement officer or one teacher in the class, in a particular department, that he is in charge of the project. Every teacher must be a supervisor or a guide to a group of students. If it's a group project, the group can be a size of 3 to 5 students per group, depending on the class size and number of the projects available to the students. And then the teacher, all the departmental teachers should be involved in supervising and guiding the students. Okay, now this one is very important, that a project which has been identified should be, as far as possible, a live project. It should have a use. It should not be a hypothetical. And once they are able to do that, they will be having some kind of confidence that that encourages the student to develop their own enterprise also. Now, timetabling of the project work is very challenging for the teachers and for the students. I normally suggest that the project work should be done in a consolidated time frame. I mean, let us say in a semester, if you have 3 subjects and 1 project, for half the semester, let that time assigned to the project may be given to those 3 subjects, other 3 subjects, and rest of the semester, rest half of the semester, the time which was allotted to the subject may be given to the project work, so that the students for good 2 months or 3 months are exclusively working on the project. They do not have the burden of the theory and practicals and other things also in the classroom. Why? Because many times, as I've been suggesting you here, the projects have to be in the industry. If the timetabling is not permitting them to go continuously in the industry for the whole day or for whole week or maybe 1 month or so, they will never get a hang of working in the industry for that particular project. Sometimes the project can be very far from the college even. So if you are, let us say, timetabling is not done properly, it becomes very challenging for the students and for the teachers also to work for the project in the industry. So a consolidated time frame should be given for the project work, and timetabling has to be adjusted accordingly. Then there should be at least 1 person from the industry to be involved in the project work, its evaluation and its execution also. At least 2 or 3 students per branch should be selected for the best project work. There can be a competition in the college for the best project activity. Maybe if you are running, let us say, 6 branches, you give the best 6 projects done by your college to the particular group of students, so that this works as a motivational factor, a healthy motivational competitional factor, for the student to perform good. They will say that they will compete to get that prize, and in return you will get the good projects also. So in many colleges I have seen they even invite best project in a particular area by the other colleges also. They give a topic, and people, the students from different from different institutions come, and they display their project works there, and the best one is chosen for the prize. Okay. We will now talk about, let us say, evaluation of project work. Often we have seen that the project work becomes, when we talk about the evaluation project work, it becomes very, very challenging for the teachers. There is so much of subjectivity. How to give marks to the students, and project work normally carry large chunk of marks. For example, if in a semester you are having a project, the project work itself may carry 600 marks or 500 marks or 400 marks. And if you do not have a proper criteria for evaluation, there is a lot of subjectivity. The teachers are at confusion whom to assign more marks, whom to assign less marks. And students also have a complaint that I have done good project and my project has not been given good marks. So I would suggest a criteria here for the teachers and for the students by which you can bring about certain amount of objectivity when you are evaluating the project work. Again, by adding more and more components and subcomponents, the objectivity can be reached. I say the planning part, when you are planning the projects, itself may carry 10% marks. Then the execution of the project may carry 30% marks. So up to 40% marks are assigned to the student, not on the basis of the results of the project, but on the planning and execution itself. Then 40% marks may be given to the report or the final project. If it is a study project, to the report. If it is a actual project, then it is the quality of the product. 40% marks may be given to that. And then 20% marks can be given to the presentation in the Viva Voce. Every project must be having a presentation which develops so many abilities in the student and followed by the Viva Voce. So the project work can be divided into 4 components for evaluation: planning 10%, execution 30%, the final product of the project or the report may carry 40% marks, and Viva Voce may carry 20% marks. Presently, most of the marks are given only to this product and report. Now there can be different subcomponents to each one of them. Let me just show you. In the planning, 10% marks, the subcomponent can be the definition of the project statement, what we call it, the feasibility, task analysis, strategy, sequencing, methodology, novel. You can add some more components if you like to, but in planning we see these components. So 10% marks means maybe 2% mark or 2.5% marks to each one of them, depending on the weightage, depending on the project. You can assign, okay, I will give 10% or 2% marks if you are well defined. Your feasibility is good, your task analysis is done well, strategy is good, so your sequencing, your scheduling is done very well. Some novel idea is there, I will give 2% marks on that, maybe 5% marks on that. Depending on the teacher, depending on the project, you may give these 10% marks of planning to these components, or you may add more components also if you like to. Then the 30% marks for the assignment, for the execution. You have different subcomponents like information or sense of inquiry, sense of responsibility, cooperation, and effectiveness in team. If it is a team or a group project, what is your contribution in that? Then resource effectiveness. Resources means materials, tools, equipment, time, and information. 30% marks can be given based on how they have done the project. And if there is an industrial project, it becomes very paramount that necessity that paramount necessity becomes that you involve the person from the industry under whom the student is performing those project in the execution, and then he should be able to or she should be able to help you in assigning that 30% marks for these things. Then for the quality of the product and the report, you see these factors, subcomponents like organization, application, analysis, synthesis, interpretation, evaluation, conclusion, accuracy, cost effectiveness, appearance, clarity. You may add some more components if you like to, and 40% marks can be divided into these subcomponents. Then Viva Voce, as I said, 30% marks for that. And this is again the table of weightages to be assigned to different components when we talk about the project work. 10% for the nature of the project, 40% for the quality of the product, 30% for the report, and 20% for the Viva Voce. When we also have a component of industrial training in our curriculum. When it comes to developing the practical skills in the student, all the components, basically the aims, the organization tips, other things are similar to that project. But then the assignment, we normally suggest the weightage is to be given to the industrial training here, what we call as internship. 60% marks can be given to the report, and 40% marks can be given to the presentation and Viva Voce. And there are different subcomponents in each one of the two. So instead of having 4 components in industrial training, we give 60% marks to the report and 40% marks to the Viva Voce. And let me, my dear friends, conclude by saying that developing appropriate psychomotor abilities or practical skills is an essential part of the educational training. To enable them appropriately placed in the industries, and also help them in being a good citizen and a responsible citizen. With a little understanding and efforts, practical skills can be properly planned, organized, and evaluated by the teachers. Thank you so much. If there are any questions on planning, organization, evaluation, the practical work, I have covered 4 major components: drawing work, lab work, workshop practice, and project and industrial training. If there are any questions from any of the institutions, kindly raise your questions and together we'll try to find the answers for the same. Jaipur if Jaipur has also joined, there is a very important announcement for them also, that on Thursday, that is on 12th, from 2 to 4, there will be a session on panel discussion, whereby you may invite an expert from an industry near your college, and the expert can be given an honorarium of 2,000 rupees. We will be reimbursing that money of 2,000 rupees for payment of honorarium to the expert. So now, coming back to the session, if there are any questions from Indore or from Meerut or from Jaipur, please, or you want to share your experience on practical work. Yes?
Any question from BIT Meerut?
Any questions from BIT Meerut?
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
This is Vishal from BIT Meerut.
Yes, Vishal.
Sir, I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah, I have a question, sir. as you talked about this psychomotor domain,
Yes.
where you talked about articulation and naturalization.
Yes.
What I understand about articulation is modifying the pattern,
Yes.
and by naturalization, I understand the refinement of it.
Naturalization means you doing the things by reflex action.
No, actually, in naturalization, what I have read in your slides is refinement, right?
Yes.
Refining word is there.
Yes.
And in articulation also there is modifying the pattern.
Yes.
Sir, do they have any difference between these two?
Yes, there is. Yes, there is.
Sir, what is that, sir, please?
Okay. When we talk about articulation, you are trying, every skill is made up of different sub skills. For example, when you're when you're driving a car, you have the skills of steering, you have skills of racing.
Sir, sorry to interrupt you, sir. Sir, can you give another example of it?
Okay.
Beside a car,
Okay.
car driving.
Okay. Let us say making a skill, making a carpentry. Let us say carpentry. All right.
Okay.
We have to make a table. Usme we have a skills of cutting. We have skills of planing. We have skills of measuring. We have skills of coming to the level where the things will fit into a particular situation. All right. The student is either making the wood cut, or he's planing, or he's making joining, or things like that. So in articulation, when he is doing a particular skill, he is trying to fit in his ability to cut a piece in a particular way, or do the planing activity in a particular way. But in naturalization, he is not thinking about that. It becomes naturally to him. I mean, he is doing.
He becomes habitual of doing the same thing.
Yes, he is not applying his mind. कि मेरे को इतना कट लगाना है, ऐसे करना है, ऐसे करना है. It is coming so natural to him. I always give you a very small example which will explain it further. For example, imagine the small child who goes to the school and learns how to write a letter or a digit. Let us say he learns how to draw 1, the digit 1. How hard for him is in the beginning to draw a straight line, vertical straight line. We make dots, and then we say he joins small dots. That is basically articulation. And then today, if I ask you to draw digit 1, you don't think about it. You don't even think about it. You just write.
Right.
And we do so many things naturally. But then it takes a lot of time for you to go to the level of naturalization. Every skill require to reach the level of naturalization requires a lot of time. But keeping in mind the time constraint, we say that in the colleges, you take the student to the level of not even articulation, to the level of precision at least. He should be able to draw somehow one. Naturalization and articulation he will learn when he goes to the industry.
After experiences.
Maybe experience. And if you've got the time, sufficient time in a particular semester to develop a particular skill, then you can go to the higher levels also. The purpose of giving the taxonomy is that you must be able to interpret the curriculum that I have to design, I have to develop my students in psychomotor domain up to what level. And depending on your time available, the resources available with you, you raise the student level of imitation, manipulation, or to the level of precision. But if the time is available and the resources are available, students are interested, you go to the level of naturalization.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
All right.
One more question from the IT.
Yes.
This is Anshu Tomar. Sir, how can we motivate the students for making live projects?
This is a very, very common question which is normally asked by the teachers. I would say that many a times we go to the classroom in a very, very theoretical manner. We rarely discuss about the practical applications, what theory, what practical I'm teaching in the classroom. For example, if I go to the classroom and I have to teach certain subject, maybe I'm from the civil engineering background, let us say today I'm going to talk about the concrete, for example. And if I just go to the concrete as conventionally being given in the books, and I repeat those things in the classroom, the students may not be motivated for the project works, the challenging project work. But if I tell them that I am going to give you I'm going to share with you a situations where concreting is a very challenging thing. For example, let us say I have to do the concreting work 40 feet below the sea level, or so and so height, and I have this kind of weather conditions, or I have this much of time for my concrete to settle down, or this kind of, let us say, framework is there where my vibrator will not be able to reach to make a good strength out of this. There can be many situations that will be possible for the teachers to bring in the classroom if teacher himself or herself is familiar of the practices which are being happening in the industry. So I always say that more than the students' requirement to go in the industry, it is a teacher's requirement to go in the industry, or at least to know what is happening in the industry, so that you can share those experiences and the students are inspired to know what is going on there, and they try to take up those challenges. Otherwise, by just having a subject the way it has been presented in the books may not actually motivate the student to take the right kind of projects. But it becomes a very challenging task, definitely. I normally conduct two days workshop or 3 days workshop only on the project work itself. Out of all these 4 components, someday maybe if you invite me at Merit, I can sit with your faculty and some of the students whereby we can come out with some challenging projects. Otherwise, what happens is वो बच्चे प्रोजेक्ट ले लेते हैं अपने सीनियर से लेकर सेकुलर स्टाइल, एंड मार्केट में भी रेडीमेड प्रोजेक्ट्स अवेलेबल हैं. Project work is one activity. Madam Ashu, you told me, Ashu Tomar?
Yes, sir.
Ashu, I have seen that, one of project work is one of the activities which has recently gained a lot of attention right from the pre-nursery classes to the engineering colleges. And if your students are able to do one good project, I am sure there is a seat for them for a good placement, or he may set up his own industry also. But the only thing is that you must be able to challenge the students. उसके अंदर जो spark है, that has to be ignited. Then leave it to him, how he does it.
Okay, thank you, sir.
All right.
Thank you, sir, from BIT.
Thank you so much. Any other question from Indore or from Jaipur? ये मेरठ में है ना? BIT Meerut. I am going to conduct probably a program in your college or some other college in Meerut on communication skills also, maybe in the month of January or February or March maybe. Anyway, any other question from Indore or from Jaipur?
Right now, no questions, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Anybody from Jaipur is not able to join us? No?
Sir, Jaipur has joined. So please give a response from Jaipur.
Jaipur, are you able to get us? Were you able to connect to us?
So mic is not working.
Okay, anyway, don't worry. I like to then close this session. And these are basically very general and just awareness level tips I have given to you. Each one of the topics require 2 days, 3 days workshops, as I said just now, to have a complete hold on that.
Hello.
Yes.
From Jaipur.
Hello. हाँ जयपुर से बोल रहे हैं क्या?
Yeah. Hello, sir. Good afternoon.
जी good afternoon.
Sir, my question is that what will be the effect on the student psychology if we call the external examiner for the project and industrial training from the industrial experts?
Okay. I would say in most of the practical work, self-evaluation is very important. Most of the time students know himself or herself very well what he or she has done. Whether you evaluate or a person from industry evaluate, it does not really matter. What I have tried to do over my years of working in the practical work is giving the tools by which you can bring about objectivity, so that the evaluation student is not subject to the teacher, but subject to what the student have performed. And students in practical work already know what they have performed. So it will not have any effect on the student psychology if you are inviting an expert from the industry. And it is very paramount, it is essential. If it is a project work, especially if you are able to invite a person from the industry where he has done the project, it is essential for you to involve him in the evaluation project. And to evaluate the execution part, the process part, how can you evaluate when you are sitting in the college and he is performing in the industry? You cannot actually. So it is essential for you to involve, and the student will be able to accept it rightly if it is assigned. It is told to them beforehand that your evaluation system should be like that. I hope I am able to answer your question. You were asking different thing.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. It's okay.
Okay, friends, have a great day. We call it a off. Some other on Thursday, we will repeat. Call the expert from the industry for the panel discussion, and we can reimburse up to 2,000 rupees to expert. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.